Good morning. I trust everybody is well. The whole idea of today's meeting. Coffee. Can we? Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. Thanks. Whole idea of today's meeting is to discuss the changes which are about to take place in terms of the General Code of Conduct. Now, it's the FAIS General Code of Conduct, which determines exactly how the F&Is and, of course, the KIs managing the F&Is distribute and render what they call financial services. In other words, the process is adopted. Now, when we started with the Code of Conduct, it was 18 or 19 pages. Today, with all the amendments that's taken place over the time, it's over 40 pages. Now, these changes that we've got now are going to be done in 3 phases. The first phase is on publication of the changes. Second phase is there's a transition of 6 months. So some of the changes will have to be in place within 6 months. Then there's a third phase. Some of these will be 12 months. And we'll be going through these one by one. So we'll talk about phase 1 first. Now, I know that the very first question that you'll be asking is, well, when is publication? I can't be entirely certain about the date of publication, but what I can tell you is that in a communication that we have had from the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, is that these changes were submitted to Parliament during February, and therefore it's imminent. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be a month, but I doubt it's longer than a month. So effectively, we are saying changes are about to take effect. Certainly phase 1 of the changes is about to take effect now. Now, the next question that you might ask is, well, surely there should be some kind of transition. Well, the argument by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority is that all of these things should actually be in place, and that these changes are purely clarification, so that the impact on in that case, the motor industry is going to be insignificant. I don't agree. Nonetheless, so let's just go through them. So let's deal with phase 1 first of all. Phase 1 is really divided into 2 parts. We've got some new definitions and some changes to the definitions, quite a few of them. And then we've got some actions and changes that the F&Is and the KIs are going to have to adopt. But let's look at those definitions first. The very first one is that we've now got clarification, total clarification, as to what is advertising and what is direct marketing. Now, advertising is absolutely clear. Advertising, the object of an advert is to generate an interest in a product or a service, not to sell a product or a service, not to close a deal, but just to generate an interest. Now, we've got to then say, well, what is an advertisement? Well, an advertisement is actually any form of publication which goes out to the public at any one time. And of course, that would include a telephone call, that will include your website. So advertising is really branding, generate an interest in your services and your products. Direct marketing is very clear. It is actually trying to close a deal on the phone. And the rules of direct marketing is that there must be some kind of voice log. Now let's try to look at this in practical terms. Client comes in to talk to the F&I, the client says, I'll think about it, or why don't you give me a call in a week or so, let me just take the car now. The F&I then a week later calls the client and tries to sell the product on the telephone. Well, if that is direct marketing, which it looks clearly it is, then that has to be voice logged, voice recorded. And the rules of voice logging and voice recording are also quite stringent. A lot of the programs that you get with voice logging aren't as effective as what they say they are. They do record, but trying to find it 2 years down the road when the client doesn't know exactly when he spoke or who he spoke to or who she spoke to and so on is very, very difficult indeed. Now, our argument is that this is not direct selling. It is merely upselling, where a client bought one policy, maybe you want to transfer the second one, or he was thinking about it and you needed to confirm stuff. So we're saying that it's not direct marketing, but according to these rules, it is direct marketing, and we will be taking that up with the regulator. And in the meantime, this is what we have. Second definition that we want to talk about is endorsements. Now, what we mean by endorsements is endorsements by somebody who recommends your insurance products. So we're only talking financial services here. So if somebody says, or somebody real, proper human being wants to record or show that your product is great, there are some very, very specific rules that you have to follow. I know that none of you really are using endorsements at the moment. The motor industry is in a bit of a downturn, so you need to get all the income that you can. And we know how successful endorsements can be. If you've watched the TV, you've watched Outsurance, and all their endorsements, and they're all following the rules. It gives you some kind of idea how, first of all, how successful endorsing is, and that there are some specific rules. So I know you've not done it in the past, as I've said. If you do want to get somebody to endorse your products, it's very easy to do. Somebody has a claim against a warranty, it will fix up nicely. You might just want to get them to make some kind of statement. Please just call us, just talk to your compliance officer, whoever you want to talk to in our company, and we can give you those rules so that you can do the job properly. And it's very, very similar, but loyalty benefits and no claim bonuses. You may have a cell captive, most of you have one way or another, and if the business is profitable, you might want to encourage more business by building in some kind of loyalty benefit or some kind of no-claim bonus. These are certainly considerations just to help you to sell. Again, there are now a whole stack of rules applying to this, and if you want to go down that road, please just talk to us one-on-one. Okay. Now, there's also a definition, and they've clarified what is plain language. We've been talking about plain language for a long time, so there's nothing sinister or different about this. What worries us? And let me just read the definition. It's a very, very simple definition. Right. Plain language. And it means, plain language means communication that A, is clear and easy to understand, B, avoids uncertainty or confusion, and C, is adequate and appropriate in the circumstances. That must take into account the factually established or reasonably assumed level of knowledge of the person at whom this cell is targeted. Now, yeah, there's nothing new about that. It's probably what you've been working with all the time. The downside is that now that it's actually written into the code, a consumer, customer, client, whatever you want to call them, could argue that he didn't understand, that his language is not English, Afrikaans, Lulu, or whatever the language is that he was simultaneous. And he can use that definition to say, I didn't understand. So you just got to be ultra careful when it comes to dealing with somebody that's home language is different. Next one that we need to talk about is the definition of related service, because now a related service is defined. And so what is a related service? A related service is a service that links directly to the financial product, financial service that you are offering. Now, in the ordinary insurance world, that happens frequently. In the motor sector, it tends to be linked to warranties. And I've seen the warranties which include, for instance, roadside assist or breakdown service or puncture service or petrol service or something. Now, where there is a related service, that related service can either be provided by you, or it can be provided by an outside supplier that you've called in to provide that service. In either case, you cannot escape full responsibility for the service being provided. For instance, if you've outsourced it to a service supplier, somebody else, you can't just say, well, they didn't turn up, it's not our fault. That's nothing to do with us. If you are selling it as a related service, you've got to accept some of the responsibility. The only way that you can do that is by having a contract with your service supplier, which includes all sorts of standards which you will then take control over. So don't think that by having this related service, you can blame it on them if things go wrong. But you can't, not entirely. Now, that is also linked to the definition of a service supplier. A service supplier is exactly this kind of person. A service supplier is somebody that is providing a linked service to your actual product. And it's therefore important, because of the standards of what I've already mentioned, that you have a full contract with them, which include what are their responsibilities and what happens if they fail in terms of breach. Service supplier is also you. You're also a service supplier, because the service supplier is a person that is marketing for somebody as well, includes agents. So in other words, where you are supplying leads, you're marketing for somebody else, like for comprehensive motor insurance, they are responsible for some of the things that you say the same way. So they must have some kind of contract with you which details what they're expecting from you, what your service standards are, what you're going to say to clients. And I suspect that a lot of those contracts are already in place, but if they're not, make sure there is a contract that you have with your insurance companies that you're providing leads to. And finally, there's the definition of white labeling, and we all understand white labeling is where you sell a product in your name, but it's not actually your product. It belongs to the insurance company, or where it is an insurance policy. It's clear that when you're selling this thing, whether it's verbal, whether it's in writing, it doesn't really matter. We are selling this policy. Information about the name of the insurer, who it is, where they're situated, and so on, must be as prominent in what you say and what you write. Size of font, etc., if it's in writing, must be as prominent as your own name. Okay, so that is the definitions. Now let's have a look at some of the things that are going to change in terms of your F&Is and, of course, your governance of F&Is. My coffee's getting cold. The very first one is something that we've been on about for some time, but it's not been written into the code. It now is written into the code. And that is, you cannot imply that your non-regulated products, or all products are regulated one way or another, but what we mean by your non-regulated products is they're not regulated by the FSCA, the Financial Conduct Authority. Now, where they are not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, you cannot infer that they are. Now, I know that you don't specifically infer that they are, but you are indirectly doing this in some cases because you're selling a bundle of contracts at the same time, selling insurance policies, warranties, and top-ups, and so on, at the same time that you're selling service contracts and maintenance contracts, which are not regulated products. Now, where they're bundled together, it can easily be assumed that, particularly on the welcome letter or on your statutory notice or whatever's produced by your platform providers, E3T or DealerNet or Signio or one of these, that you mention the FAIS Ombudsman, you mention the financial sector, but do you mention the National Consumer Commissioner for those non-regulated products? Do you mention how to make a lodge a complaint with the National Consumer Commission as to what the differences are, how they work, and so on? So if you're going to do it for the FSCA, you've also got to do it for the National Commissioner. So if you don't have the NCC, the National Commission, the National Consumer Commission details as to how to lodge a complaint, drop us an email and we can provide them to you. So make sure that you do not infer, even indirectly or ignorantly, or innocently, should I say, not ignorantly, innocently, suggest or infer that the FSCA is actually the regulator. FAIS Ombudsman is actually the complaints handler. Okay, so that is that. The next one here, Section 8 of the Code of Conduct. This is the one which describes the methods, processes that you have to use in selling a product, rendering a financial service. And right at the start, what we've always done is included affordability objectives or the needs or whatever you want to call them, as well as the product knowledge that the client has. So these have always been built in. There's some extras now built in. First of all, you have to ascertain, or the F&I has to ascertain, how risk averse or risk tolerant the client is. Obviously, those who are more risk averse, you're going to try to close more deals. Those that are risk tolerant, they might say no, and you've got to explain what they are, and so on. So you've got to find that out right up front and note it on the record of advice, that risk tolerance, the risk profile, as it's called. That's the first thing. And then, of course, there's another aspect to it, and it's expected of the F&I to find out up front from the client, the customer, whatever you want to call it, to find out if he has or he or she has any specific requirements for this type of transaction. Transaction, in all probability, is to buy a vehicle or the financing of the vehicle. So if that person has any specific requirements, and you're going to have to address those as specifics. Okay. And you're also going to, or the F&I is also going to have to point out that the advice that's given by the F&I purely relates to the vehicle and the financing of the vehicle, that it doesn't cover anything else other than that. So it is very clear at the outset the risk profile of the client, whether there's any specific needs that the client has or is scared about, and that the advice is going to be provided. Now that sounds quite ominous. In thinking about it more, it's not such a bad thing, because this is what is going to form the basis of the advice fee that you're going to be charging the client as soon as the law changes, which we've been talking about for a very, very long time. So our feeling is, let's do this now. We'll find a way of doing it. We will be liaising with you on this and say how it should be done or what we think it should be done. You'll have your own ideas, which is great. But this is the new approach to this one. And there's also a clause that the FSCA put in. I remember seeing this proposal. My goodness, it was some time ago. It never went through. I always thought it was a little bit ominous, which is where they put a clause in to state that the FSCA can, if it so desires, determine what should be in the record of advice and how the record of advice should look. At this point in time, it's obviously left to each individual dealership and each individual broker, if you want to call it that. So that is now been put in. So obviously the FSCA is a little concerned that the records of advice are just not appropriate in some cases. So that is phase one, effective from the time of publication, which is imminent. So now let's look at phase two, which is 6 months. It's a transition period for 6 months. New phase two changes, replaces entirely Section 3A of the Code of Conduct. Section 3A has always dealt with conflicts of interest. Okay, so let's have a look at what they are. There's always been this aspect of you cannot pay your staff, your F&Is, on quantity without looking at the fair treatment of the clients. And now they have clarified that. So I want to read those through to you. Let me just find them here. Right. And this is how it's worded, because this is going to have a massive impact. A provider may not offer any financial interest to a representative of that provider. The representative is obviously your F&I. One, that is determined with reference to the quantity of business secured for the provider without also giving due regard to the delivery of fair outcomes for clients. And there's two others. I'll come back to the two others. Now, on the face of it, it's not much different to what we've done. In most cases where the F&I has not acted totally fairly to the client, or has not achieved certain aspects, we have scored them on a scorecard, and in many cases the F&I is punished, if you want to call it that, and they don't get their full commission. So we can say on that basis we're kind of achieving this, but here's the downside. It goes on to say, for the purposes of this, a provider must be able to demonstrate that the determination of an entitlement to that financial interest takes into account measured indicators relating to, one, achievement of minimum service level standards in respect of clients. Okay, so there has to be some kind of service level standards which are detailed. Delivery of fair outcomes to clients, which we are really addressing already. That's that first one, that's the problem. And three, quality of the representative's compliance with the Act, which we also cover. So that's that first one. But it goes on to say, this has to be agreed between the provider and the F&I, which is done. But sufficient weight is attached to those indicators to materially mitigate the risk of representatives giving preference to the quantity of business over the fair treatment of clients. That we have to sit and work out exactly how we're going to write these standards, what those standards are, how the weighting is going to be done. So the scorecard has to change again. Now it gets a bit worse, I'm sorry to say. Goes on later, I'll come back to those other two items, which are not so scary. That your conflict of interest management policy must, and it's not in there at the moment, must specify the type of financial interest that the provider will offer a representative and the basis on which a representative will be entitled to that financial interest, and motivate how that financial interest complies with what we just done. So that is the tricky one. I think in our own company on Friday, coming Friday, we will be debating this to see how we must change the scorecard and what we can do. And no doubt we'll be in touch with you on a one-by-one basis to see how we can implement it in your particular instance. So that we're going to do on Friday. So let's go back to those other two. The other two is not too serious. What it basically says is that a provider, nor you, it doesn't matter whether it's you or say an OEM, cannot give a financial interest to a provider for giving preference to a specific product supplier, like insurer. And the third one is for giving preference to a particular product over another product. So if Mercedes, Toyota, BMW say you have to sell our product, and you've got your other product that you've got available, your own product perhaps in your own sort of captive, or it might just be a range of products that you have. You cannot pay your F&I more or offer them increased incentives for selling a particular product supplier or particular product. And that also means that you cannot earn it as a provider from another provider. In other words, if one of these OEMs, these manufacturers, distributors, if they say, if you sell our product over your product, we will give you extra discounts on parts or extra discounts on sales of units, that is now prohibited. But it's not you that will be in trouble. It's the provider. Now, let's have a look at some others. Remember that it's 6 months. We've got 6 months to get that into place from the date of publication. Okay. Now, you will recall that for the last 6 months, it could be longer, time flies, we've been talking about a KID document, a key information document that has to be supplied within 30 days of the point of sale. Now, we have always said that that's the insurer's responsibility to give you a KID document, which you have to supply. And what that KID document does is it doesn't just duplicate the insurance policy. It covers things that are not necessarily covered in the insurance policy. It covers things like cooling off clauses. It covers what would happen if an excess was payable on a policy, and what would happen if somebody couldn't afford to pay the excess. What would happen, the exact process that what if the premium's not paid on time, or if the debit order bounces, how they go about it, how they can lodge complaints and to you, the dealer, or to the administrator, or to the insurer, and which one you should go to for which reasons. All of this stuff has to be explained verbally, and it's actually in this KID document. Now, that KID document was demanded in terms of the Insurance Act, so it was a responsibility of the insurer to make sure that the client got that document, and the best way of the insurer getting it through to them was to give it to the F&I to say, here you have it. Now, in this new wording, it's now the F&I's responsibility to ensure that that information is not only given verbally, but is given in writing. So they've passed the responsibility to the F&I. So the F&I has the responsibility for giving out information in writing. The insurer has the responsibility for designing a document. So in all probability, we're talking the same one. So please, if you're not giving out, if your F&Is are not giving out a KID document, ID, please make sure you've got one. 6 months, we've got to put that in place, or that should be in place now because of the insurance. We've already talked about advertising. There's a whole new section on all the rules of advertising. And I said to you earlier on, if you're going to do some advertising, please contact us one-on-one and we'll go through the rules with you. So at this stage, I'm going to leave this over because there's a lot of rules and not everybody's going to advertise. But just understand those are there. And also on complaints management. Now, interestingly, we've had a sell captive, the insurers, and it'd be Guard Risk or mutual risk services or Centric or any of these will have already said to you, we already demand in your governance policies some form of complaints management process and some advertising process. Where we have been involved in assisting you to produce those wordings, most of this is already in place. If not, please understand that you really need to have policies on advertising and complaints. And this is also strange because where we have seen what the insurers are asking you to do, when you go to sell captive, slightly different. Not much, but there's significant differences in the wording that the Financial Conduct Authority is asking you to do. So we're going to have to sit down, or you're going to have to sit down, or we're going to do something with your insurers to say, let's try to work out how these rules must apply in certain circumstances. So that's coming. Today's all 6 months. And then in 12 months' time, 12 months after publication, there is just details as to exactly what your complaints policy must contain. So in other words, it's all got to be in place in 12 months and how all your complaints are going to be categorized. It's quite a few. Where we've already done that for you because you've got to sell captive, it's already done. Where we haven't done it, that's it. Okay, so that is the code of conduct. I can just say to you that we will help you through this. As I said to you earlier, we have a meeting on. Let's get rid of that. We have a meeting on. We have a meeting on Friday to discuss this, and we will be letting you know how it impacts on you on a one-on-one basis. Okay, so that's it. If you've got any questions, just ask or send them through by email. Okay, you guys have a great day. Thanks.